Right, hey guys, how we doing? So yeah, we're doing this. Been a while coming. It's because it's a long one. I've been not had time for this. Worked really hard to make sure I got plenty of time to sort this one out. Oh man, resyncing the audio every 12 minutes and this is going to be fun. Yeah, that's what I have to do when I edit these. All the Sternritter in Bleach. I can't wait for this. Tekking's so funny with these. The cringe is just unreal and brilliant. And this is also going to be educational. I can't really remember much of these Sternritters because it was manga and I was reading it online. A few bevies. It's just like an enjoyable thing that I never really processed properly. So, let's sit down, enjoy. I've got energy drinks ready. I can't remember the last time I recorded something that was this long. And let's enjoy this. Oh, I love the background. Oh my god.
Hey everybody, Tekking 101 here today with a video chronicling every single Sternritter in the Bleach series. Who they are, what their power is, what their holy form looks like. As you can probably imagine, it's a long list and it's probably going to be a long video, so you might want to make like Sternritter G and get some snacks. Alright, here we go.
Okay.
Letter A, the Almighty Yuha. Alright, so I'm not going to spend too much time on Yuha. I've already made 2 other videos about him discussing who he is exactly and all of his powers that he has. Some of you might not even consider him a Sternritter because he's more like the king that the Sternritters fight for. He's like the Christ figure for all Quincy's. But considering how relevant he is to the plot and the Sternritters' existence hinging on his power, I have to mention him a little bit. Alright, so Yuha has a literal shit ton of powers, but the one that's the most pertinent here is his ability to divide out fragments of his soul. Most specifically, in this case, he can carve a script or a letter into a Quincy and then enact a special power onto them. Now, it's a little bit confusing as whether or not Yuha has all the powers in them and he's just giving them out to the Sternritters, or like he just carves the letter into their soul and they awaken the ability themselves. That's kind of up for debate. We know that there's a blood ritual that you have to partake in to become a Sternritter. To gain this power, you have to like drink Yuha's blood, as we saw Uryu do. Yuha's power as the Almighty basically just gives him the ability of omnipotence and omniscience. He's able to see everything around him, both figuratively and literally, in that he can see the future. However, even this power seems to have a little bit of a faults in it. He wasn't able to see other events that involved gods. Like, he couldn't foretell the Mimi Hage appearing and trying to protect the Soul King or anything like that. So, while it seems like for the most part he has pretty good, you know, omniscience, he does have some faults there that could maybe be exploited in this final battle. Letter A again, Uryu Ishida. Okay, once again, not going to spend a lot of time on Uryu for obvious reasons. He's part of the main cast of the series. You had over almost 700 chapters to learn about the dude. But if you do need a refresher, I did make a discussion video about him a while back, and honestly, in the context of him being a Sternritter, there's really not much to talk about here. We don't know what his power is, what the A stands for. I'm going to assume, though, even though he's the same letter as Yuha, he's not the Almighty also. He probably has another script that Yuha bestowed upon him.
I don't think Yuha would have done that either. We know so far in this point in the story that he's sort of a double agent, that he's has his own devices trying to go against Yuha, trying to destroy him rather than help him out. But we don't know if, you know, Uryu's a pretty smart dude. That's all I'm saying. This might be like a double cross of a double cross. Oh, so this isn't after it's all ended.
Doesn't trust him as far as he can throw him. But yeah, not really much else to talk about here. The powers that he exhibited are pretty much the same exact powers he's always exhibited throughout the series. Just he has like a new bow and everything like that. Yuha did refer to him as the successor of the Quincy's, the person that's going to take up the throne after he leaves. So we don't really know what's up with Yuha's plan, if that's just, you know, him just blowing up Uryu to make him seem like a bigger deal to all the Sternritters, like to motivate them, or he actually has like a bigger master plan, or if he's just going to toss him out with yesterday's garbage after he's done. Because Uryu even came out and said that he wants to, basically, he has a grudge against Yuha because he's the one that pretty much led to his mother Katagiri's death. But yeah, I go on to all that in the discussion video, so check that out below. Letter B, Jugaram Hashwolf. Alright, so Jugo is essentially the true leader of the Sternritters. His full title is the Sternritter Grandmaster, so if you're going to look at Yuha as the king, Hashwolf is essentially his right-hand man, his highest-ranking general that commands his army. Fun fact, we don't really know what the B stands for. It's been pretty much laid on that it's the balance, and given what Hashwolf's ability is when it compares to Yuha, you know, the night and day sort of thing, it's most likely going to be balance. I'm just saying, saying we've never seen a little info card expressly saying what the B stands for. Jugo is a very unique case in the Stern
I hope you guys leave comments down below to like add to this, because he's done this after before. I would have thought he would have done this after it all ended, but
him and Bazby have a history. They grew up in some country out in the middle of nowhere. They resented Yuha because Yuha burned down Bazby's house and killed his family and
I'm glad he's showing these manga
panels
because I'm getting flashbacks to reading it myself.
Was living in a forest with his uncle at the time, who was probably a diddler, but that's another story. Anyway, Yuha burned that forest down, and Jugo most likely killed his uncle there. And they spent the next 3 years training to fight against Yuha. Eventually, they met the dude. This at this point where Yuha really explained who Jugo was. He was the special chosen Quincy, the selected child that was born every 200 years, and he was one of them, and Yuha was one of them. And unlike Yuha, though, he doesn't have the same abilities to like take in people's souls and foster them out and take them back after they die. But Jugo is able to basically give out power to whoever's around them. Bazby's potential was raised exponentially because Jugo was around him when they were training. So Jugo took on the position as the leader of the Stern Ritters, and whenever it's night out, whenever Yuha has to go to sleep to replenish his powers, Jugo receives all the powers of the Almighty, I guess, on top of his already, very impressive combat skills with his sword and everything like that. He does have the ability to see into the future and everything, but it's probably not as refined as Yuha. I would imagine he's probably not as used to using it as Yuha is. On top of that, his abilities themselves as the balance, I guess, are rather confusing. We only really saw them demonstrated one time when he was going to execute BG9 and Kangdu. He tried to cut Kangdu, who was the iron, and he blocked his sword with his iron arm. But then he's like, oh, the scales are tipping in my favor now, and then he was able to cut straight through him. So maybe his abilities, like whatever, is unbalanced in the battlefield, he can shift it like scales. And he's like, oh, I can't cut you, well, now I change the scales, and now I can't cut you. Seems like kind of an OP ability, but Jugo's kind of an OP character. Him and Uryu are fighting at the moment. They're pretty much destined to have their epic battle.
I really
that is
wish this was done after it ended.
Sternritter B. Sternritter C, the compulsory Pernida Punctus.
So weird. Yeah, very strange.
Pernida is a member of Yuha's elite Stern Ritter Guard, the Schutzstaffen, and the absolute weirdest Stern Ritter. It mostly hides itself under a hood, only revealing a pair of eyes and sometimes a hand crawling out, but it's really creepy. It doesn't talk, it just kind of stands there and breathes. It is later revealed that Pernida is in fact the left arm of the Soul King, and I don't mean that figuratively, like oh, it is the left arm, and it has certain duties that the Soul King... No, it is quite literally a giant left hand. It's able to increase its size, tear itself apart, and then duplicate itself whenever it gets injured. If ever it gets a piece blasted off of it, it'll just create another
It really went weird bleachy at the end, man. It was like, what the
because just the fact that it would be able to hide under that hood to begin with means that it would have to transform. Also, we saw other hands coming out of it at some point, so it can clearly do something along those lines. Now, the ability of the compulsory itself allows Pernida to manipulate nerves. It usually shoots them out underneath its fingernails, but we see it can shoot them out from pretty much any part of its body, hand
flashbacks
body. Anyway, whatever the nerves come in contact with, whether it be inanimate or organic, it's able to manipulate. Whether it be stone walls, it can move and attack, or if it comes in contact with an organic body, it can infiltrate the nerves in that body and then twist and contort it in all different horrible, grotesque, saw-like ways, basically compressing it down to the size of a meatball, as Mayuri called it. He was able to rip Kenpachi's arm pretty much right off of his body, so you don't want to basically come in contact with the nerves, because if you do, you're pretty much completely fucked right there, unless you're Mayuri and you can kind of like, do a little bit of makeshift surgery, but even in that case, you don't want to come in contact with these things. Since it's also the left arm of the Soul King and governs progress, Pernida's intelligence seems to be kind of like unstable. When it began the fight against Kenpachi and Mayuri, it spoke not at all. It didn't seem it had really that much intelligence, but slowly throughout the fight it began to, its vocabulary began to get a little bit more eloquent. Eventually it got up to the level of Kenpachi, and then finally near the end of the fight it was able to have similar intellect to Mayuri. Now, we never got to see its holy form if it ever did have one, but we did get to see it multiply a few times and exhibit all these other abilities, which are just as interesting. Pernida was killed when it defeated Nemu and then lapped up her corpse. However, Nemu's corpse has like a bunch of like self-replicating, regenerating cells. So Pernida basically began to hyper-regenerate at an incredible rate and basically just exploded into goo. I say maybe with the air quotes because considering it's like the left arm of the Soul King and this really relevant thing, and we don't really know everything about what's up with it yet, or the right arm for that matter, I'm kind of hesitant to say that it's gone forever and we're never going to see it again.
Pretty sure it
but,
was, I don't know. Again, correct, read the comments.
Sternritter D, the death-dealing Askin Nakleva. Askin is another member of the Shoot
He was
and
pretty
my
cool.
favorite Sternritter.
Yeah, he was class.
And it's kind of hard not to like the guy. He's basically the closest thing you're going to get to Deadpool in the Bleach series.
Yeah.
He's fourth wall breaking sometimes. He always brings up how, you know, other characters are monologuing constantly. Even up into his death, he's like given a death spiel like about his ability, and then he's just
was he
like,
the one that Grimmjow snuck up on?
Anyway, his ability, the death dealing, is essentially working with the lethal dosage. Now, I'm not going to stand here and explain everything to you. It's kind of like a toxicology, biology lesson that you probably all learned in high school at some point.
Really?
So there's a link in the description to go read all about median lethal dosage, so you can go figure that out. Otherwise,
that's quite interesting. Well done, thank you for that.
Quick. You can pause the video, and here's what his power does. If you want me to stream it down really simplistically, I would say his powers deal with poisoning and immunity. Poisoning, not just in the sense that he can poison you with a substance. No. He can turn any substance poisonous, whether it be Reiatsu, oxygen, nitrogen.
That is quite deadly,
your own
isn't it?
blood in your system. He can make that anything toxic to you beyond a certain lethal dosage. Along with this is his immunity. Askin is essentially nigh invincible. He really can't die unless you really have to pound at him to make it happen. You can't just simply attack him with normal swords or attacks. Anything that's Reiatsu-based is pretty much not going to work. An example of this is when Yoruichi struck him with lightning multiple times, and he was able just to brush that off.
Like, whatever.
Yushiro basically blew his fucking body into cinders. He was able to brush that off, no problem. After he experiences the attack one time, his body remembers the Reiatsu it came from, and he's now immune to it. So even the same attack with the same power, done immediately after the first one, he could still just, you know, brush it off, no problem, because he's Askin Nakleva, bitches. He has a variety of different techniques hinging around the idea of poisoning or immunities. His gift balls can be sent out, and whenever they come in contact with a Shinigami or Hollow alike, they can basically change anything in the surrounding area into poison. As I said, blood or air or whatever he wants to drop them down. He has another technique called Gift Bad, which basically stretches out the entire area like a pool of poison that everyone drops down on. He has another technique once he goes into his holy form, Hassian, God's poison taster, called Gift Ring, which when he shoots out anything that it comes in contact with,
it looks like he should be in Space Dandy.
on that one point and is killed and eliminated immediately, no matter what it is. His ultimate technique is Gift Ball Deluxe, which summons a giant gift ball as sort of like a perimeter inside, and he can seal his opponent in so they can't get out no matter what. Unless you're Urahara Kisuke, and the Gift Ball Deluxe has the own abilities, you know, inside of it, where, you know, you really can't move much because he can manipulate all the immunities and all the poisons himself. Now, you can kill him, it's not impossible, it's just very unlikely. You basically can't use anything Reiatsu-based or anything really that clever. The only way you can kill him, as what we've seen so far, is just sheer physical damage, like Grimmjow ripping out his fucking heart and crushing it Mortal Kombat style. That'll do it. Although even in that case, he was still able to stay alive for a few minutes afterwards, and when he finally does kick the bucket, the powers of his death dealing magnify to insane degrees, so anyone that's immediately around him is going to get dropped probably, and when he does die. I would love to go more about Askin. He's my favorite Sternritter, as I said.
So cool,
all day, but I gotta move on. Thanks for existing, bro. You're my favorite, I think. Kubo
maybe Gurren Lagann,
right there when
Space Dandy-esque.
Came up with your character design. Alright, moving on. Sternritter E, the Explode, Bambietta Bastard. Okay, so she is the first female Sternritter to ever be revealed, and she's kind of like the leader of this little subgroup. I call them the Sternritter clique of like the female knights inside of the Sternritter, making up of the Sternritter T, P, G, and Z. She has the ability of the Explode, which allows her to send out her Reiatsu and comes in contact with anything, and then it subsequently blows up. Now, keep in mind, she's not using her Reiatsu as a bomb, like whatever the race she comes in contact with explodes. explodes. No, whatever her Reiatsu comes in contact with actually becomes the bomb, and it explodes itself. So you can't simply just like knock her explosions away or nullify them or anything like that, because they'll, you know, infect whatever you're using. Like if you're using a sword or something and hoping just to swat away your explosion, it ain't gonna happen. Your sword will then explode. She's a little bit, I would say, unstable personality-wise, and that's not just, you know, bitches be crazy. No, she's a little bit fucked up. She brings men back to her chambers under the auspices of having sex before she just splits them down the middle, stem to stern, like praying mantis style. Maybe possibly before or after they've had sex, I'm not really sure. And yeah, that's what she does in her free time to calm down. Anyway, we don't know what her holy form is called.
Not that it's okay either way.
But harpy, her wings extend over her arms, and then she can shoot out her reishi bombs more efficiently through the wings. She stole Sajin Komamura's Bankai, Tokujo Tengen Myo, but she never used it on him or anybody else, and it was eventually taken back from her, and that's why she could go into her holy form against him. She was defeated by Komamura when he went into his Dongaijo Bankai, and which was basically a massive Reiatsu, so her Reiatsu bombs didn't do anything, and knocked her off to the side of the Seirei. She was pretty much battered and beaten on the battlefield when the other Sternritter clique members showed up, and Giselle ended up killing her and turning her into one of her zombies. And then she was under her command for a little bit there before she was defeated by Charlotte Coolhorn. Last time we saw her, she was kind of alive. She was being sucked on by Giselle. That sounded a little bit weird. no, that sounded about as sexual as... Yeah, it's worse. Whatever you're thinking of, it was worse, if you don't know the context. So yeah, last time we saw her, she was still technically alive.
I love how funny he can be in this.
Being a zombie, but
explaining the Sternritter stuff and making jokes.
Sternritter F,
oh, she weird.
Has not. Oh.
So weird.
Do I have to talk about him? Okay, fine. Alright, so Asnot is one of the first Sternritter that showed up in the invasion. He fought against Renji and Byakuya. He managed to steal Byakuya's Bankai Senbonzakura Kageyoshi. He later used it on him to drill it into a wall, so Asnot came pretty damn close to killing off Byakuya. If it wasn't for the fangirls that saved him, you can always rely on them. Anyway, Asnot looks like the
outcry and disappointment, and then it was like, okay, we won't kill him then.
I think that's a pretty apt comparison there. His ability is the Fear, which manifests in the form of all these thorns that he can summon around his body. Anything that is struck by these thorns is infected by Asnot's Fear Goo, which has this unyielding, whatever the most intense fear for that person is, infects their body. There's really no way you can avoid it. Byakuya tried to be like, oh, well, you know, I've always experienced fear. I just think about Rukia whenever I'm feeling afraid during battle, and that makes me feel like, oh, God, no! Oh, God! Rukia, what did they do to you, you motherfucker? Okay, that's why I didn't want to talk about this guy. He also has a button fetish. Whatever. That's one of the least weird things about his character, but thought I should bring it up. Yeah, so he pummeled Byakuya into a wall, and eventually during the second invasion after his Bankai was taken from him, he fought against Rukia, who seemed to be put up a pretty good fight against him. Rukia could not prevent the Fear Goo from coming in contact with her. It can't be stopped by ice or any physical boundary. It kind of just slips through whatever. It's sort of like this symbolic thing that represents fear, and if you get anything splashed on you, it's just one drop is enough to have the fear overtake you. As for his holy form, well, I guess you could call it unholy form, he basically turns into a Slipknot video. It's called Tartara Foros. It's one of the few holy forms that actually have a name. While in this form, he's able to summon up this giant area around him with all these eyes coming in contact, so it doesn't matter. He doesn't need to use the Fear Goo anymore. Basically, whenever the eyes come in contact with the enemy's eyes, just through the optic nerves alone, it's able to inject fear directly into them there. Although this area can be destroyed from the outside, as we saw with Byakuya. He made one more final transformation before he was killed by Rukia. He was able to basically shed his body, and this amorphous thing came out like a giant bubbly version of himself.
So weird.
You know, it's all, you know, grotesque and bleeding and leaking.
God, imagine if this does get animated, man.
Rukia immediately proceeded to go into Bankai and freezer dry his ass. He's also one of the few Sternritters that actually have a backstory. We actually got to see what he did before being met by Yuha and given the powers of the fear. He was this very sickly man that had some sort of respiratory disease. I think maybe had cancer or something, tuberculosis. He was in a hospital bed. He was in constant pain. He was very religious, hoping that one day he goes to heaven and everything's cool. And then Yuha arrived after he did his holy selection. He was one of the few that was affected by it, and he bestowed upon the fear onto Asnot. So yeah, I really wish we get to see more backstories with Sternritter. Stern Ritters, but whatever.
Yeah, that would be
Stern
cool.
Ritter G, the glutton, Latato Lampert. So Latato is the obligatory lolly character of the Stern Ritter. Get it? Latato, little tot. Yeah, that's really funny.
There we go.
Her ability, the glutton, allows her to eat and digest anything, no matter what it is, organic or otherwise. For subjects that are much larger than her, her mouth can literally expand to several times her own body size to consume anything. A downside of this power, though, is it seems that Latato is in a constant state of hunger no matter how much she eats.
Damn.
We don't really know where the food goes, if, you know, she immediately incorporates it into her body, maybe she converts it into reishi, or maybe her stomach is kind of like Kirby, and it's like a separate dimension where all the things she eats go into this void, trapped between heaven and hell for all eternity.
Damn,
her holy form takes the appearance of saw-like patterned wings, as well as with her holy bow, and she's really shown herself to be much of a tactician, you know, more so than the
hat's
other
coming off the head more and more.
Not just in the Stern Ritter clique, but just in general. She seems much more smart, trying to figure out ways to take on the opponents, you know, up until the point she decided to take on Yuha with just Giselle to help her out there. Probably not one of the shining moments of Latato. We don't really know how that fight went, but I'm just going to go off on a limb here and assume that Yuha did not exert very much effort. We cut back to the very end of it where we see Latato, you know, spewing blood from her stomach. She says her dying words as she falls to the ground, so we can assume that she is now deceased. Stern Ritter H, the Heat, Bazby, also known as Bazard Black, is his full name. Bazby has had a long history with the Stern Ritter, stretching back hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, back during the medieval era when Yuha first reigned over the northern territories. He had the backstory with Jugo, which we already touched upon when I was discussing Stern Ritter B. And so basically, yeah, Bazby lived in this, like, he was like royalty, essentially, back in the day. And he lived in this castle with his family, and then Yuha eventually burned down the forest and the castle and killed his family, and that made Bazby swore vengeance against Yuha. So he trained with Jugo. Unbeknownst to him, Jugo was actually helping him out increase his own power through Jugo's ability, and he was basically like, we're going to train and we're going to, you know, join the Stern Ritter and we're going to infiltrate Yuha's ranks and we're going to kill that son of a bitch. That plan didn't really pan out too well because it was later revealed that Jugo was the hidden half of Yuha, in which Jugo aligned with him, and that kind of left Bazby high and dry. Bazby eventually did train and hone his skills to the point where he was accepted into the Stern Ritter, and then a lot of stuff happened that we're not sure of. I'm sure nothing interesting happened in that, you know, time frame there, not the least of which being the fact that the flashback between Bazby and Jugo clearly was several hundred years ago, and then Bazby is still, it takes the appearance of somebody in his 20s, and he's a Quincy, you know, they're regular humans just with like extra powers added on, so a little bit of a gap in the history that we need to still learn about there.
Brush over that.
But his ability of the heat allows him to manipulate fire, of course, in a variety of ways. The ones that he likes to use the most are his burner finger techniques. They're, you know, one technique for each finger on his hand. He has burner finger 1 that shoots out a pillar of fire, basically like a pistol. Burner finger 2, which summons like a flame whip. Burner finger 3, which sends a spew of fire.
I'd love to see this animated. My God.
Burner finger 4, which summons a fucking claymore on his hand.
Yeah,
and then burning full fingers, not burning finger 5, because Bazby, I guess, doesn't know how, you know, naming techniques work in manga. Whatever. Burning full fingers erupts his flames in a giant, massive, blazing tornado directly at his opponents. He was eventually killed by Jugo. They had this sort of like fight between friends. You know, he was, you know, betrayed by Yuha. And actually, wait a second. This doesn't make any sense. So Bazby wanted to kill Yuha because he's the one that burned down his castle and killed his parents. And he's like, I'm going to train and fight Yuha. And then later on in the story, when Yuha uses Holy Selection, Bazby's looking at the sky like, is this how you do things, Yuha? Your Majesty? You're not my king. I'm like, did something happen in the intervening time there? Did Bazby get, like, brainwashed or something? Because the way he reacted when Yuha did the Holy Selection was like, he was like, we've been betrayed by Yuha. I'm like, well, no shit, he was a dick. You should have known that already. So maybe
was a bit of a twat to you already.
Anyway, yeah, his holy form, which I thought would be way cooler than it really is. You know, who else was expecting Bazby's holy form to have, like, giant phoenix wings or something?
Yeah, boss,
you know, fire, cool, badass. No, his holy form just takes the appearance of these 2 rods shooting out. I guess they're like, you know, jets for, like, propulsion. Then he gets like the standard Halo.
It usually seems to be the way with like characters that have got a more human-looking thing, where they don't do much to their transformations, whereas if they look masks and other things going on, then they do seem to be more monstrous in their transformations sometimes.
The one that pounded a hole directly through Izuru Kira. because that's the one that apparently he showed up at the same location Izuru did. And, I mean, Izuru's still alive, but, yeah, that's a pretty lasting injury there. But, yeah, Bazby for a long time was seen as, like, one of the main Sternritter that Kubo really wanted to focus on. He's dead now, but, you know, for a time there, he seemed like a rather interesting character.
Yeah, he did seem like someone that would
and I enjoyed
go
his
the
backstory
distance.
quite a bit. He's not really one of my favorites, but he had a lot of stuff going for him, and I did enjoy his character. I just thought maybe a few more things could have made him a little bit more badass than he really was, but, yeah, whatever. He had a mohawk, so that adds, like, 10 points to the cool meter for me.
It would look cool.
Sternritter I, the Iron, Kang Do. So Kang Do is one of the very few characters in Bleach. In fact, I think there's only 2 of them that have Chinese-based names. I think the only other one is one of Baragon's Fraxion. It was Chao Neng Pao, I think, is the only other one that has that sort of motive going on. Okay, so Kang Do, interestingly enough, is one of the few Sternritters that actually used the Bankai they stole from the Shinigami captain, other than Driscoll and Asnod. So
it is interesting that they could do
against
that,
Toshiro in the first invasion, stole Daiger and Kirinmaru, and honestly preferred to use that a lot more than his own power of the Iron. We didn't really know what the Iron was until right up until his
It's interesting because they obviously had to show that they could use it,
in the fight
didn't they? So
against Toshiro there. Toshiro
what's the point in them taking the Bankais if they're not going to use them against them?
Qualified his Bankai, so Kang Do was like kind of like the first one to get really the shit kicked out of him. It was like, oh shit, okay, they figured out our weakness. He displayed a few interesting abilities on his own. Well, rather just one interesting ability. Shi Jin, I think it was called, where he placed his 2 weapons together, which were like Wolverine claws, placed them together in like an appearance of a snake spirit, like shot out at Toshiro. But at this point, Toshiro was, you know, he was done. He was rocking Holified Bankai, so he pretty much just froze Kang Do to his core there. He did release his holy form here to free himself from this ice prison, though it was off panel. We did not see what it looked like. The last time we saw him, he was in His Majesty's Palace, the Silver, along with BG9. They were going to be punished because they failed. They lost their battles and they lost their Bankais they stole. So Jugo was sent to go execute them. And this is where the point we find out what his ability, the Iron, really does. He's allowed to create iron over any portion of his body. Okay. Anybody watch Ben 10 Alien Force? Kevin? Anybody? Okay, whatever. Anyway, yeah. He's able to spot iron all over his body, which he uses to block Jugo's Claymore. However, Jugo just simply uses his balance power, which allows him to tilt the scales in his favor and slice right through Kang Do, killing him at that moment. Yeah, so Kang Do, not really a lot of the screen time. Maybe he would have been cool if we got to see what his holy form was, but honestly, he seemed more of just like a guinea pig to show off. You know, all the holo powers is what poisons Quincy's, and that's basically what he was used for there. Sternritter J, Quillhei Opie. So, Kurei is the first Sternritter that actually expressed all the powers of the Sternritter. He was basically used as an example to see what these new enemies were capable of. He fought against Ichigo at the very beginning of this arc, and he was the leader of the hunting squad in Huecomundo. His job was to go and recruit as many Arrancar as possible for the vanguard unit in Yuha's army, the Vandenreich. Now, some people actually say that maybe Quillhei was not a Sternritter because he was part of this hunting squadron, the Acto army, I think it was called. I, for one, look at it like, you know, Yuha assembled his Sternritter first, A through Z, and then he was like, all right, Quillhei, your power is best suited to capturing and detainment, so you will lead this special
different factions
units to go and recruit the vanguard. I think that's the better way to look at it there. His letter is J, which stands for the jail. It's the first Sternritter power that's been revealed in the series, and its ability is to basically seal off, I guess, any structure or trap any person in this spherical, like, hamster ball, basically. He was able to shoot his like power into the Garganto, which stitched up the opening, so he's able to, like, stitch up dimensions, so that's pretty important there. And then trap Ichigo in the aforementioned hamster ball, which he was not able to break out until he awakened his Quincy powers. Quillhei's power cannot trap Quincy's, only Hollows or Shinigami.
That's interesting.
And also something interesting about Quillhei is that he introduced so many cool Quincy techniques, but we don't actually get to see them utilized by any Sternritter later on.
Right,
he used this technique called Sklavre, which means like reishi slavery. Like he's able to control and manipulate not just the reishi around him, like the area, like even beings made of like reishi, like Alon himself. He was able to like rip apart at the molecular level, gather its powers,
no one else did
and
anything
incorporate
like that.
it into its own holy form. Hey, that seems like a really badass power. No Sternritter ever uses it, and it is never mentioned throughout this entire arc since that point. Oh, but he also uses Ranso Tengai, you know, that ability that Quincy's can use to basically make puppet strings so they're allowed to move even after they've been critically injured. You know, that technique Uryu used that one time and you'd think would be massively useful for a battle when your body becomes worn out and you can no longer fight.
Yeah.
Never utilized a single time, not even mentioned by a single Stern Ritter, even though multiple times throughout the series it would have been very useful.
Very handy, yeah, goddamn.
So, yeah, I feel like with Quillhay, it's like, you know, Kubo's like, all right, Quincy's are the new enemy. I gotta showcase all the cool things they can do. And then after Quillhay's fight, it's after he's killed by Grimmjow. He's sliced right in half by Grimmjow as he makes his epic return. He immediately forgets about the Sclavre,
I had all these cool things. Why don't I do them anymore?
We're not gonna be using that anymore. At first, he kind of designed what looked like Heinrich Himmler, the leader of the SS from the Nazi party. That was very clearly what his design was supposed to be. Oh, and I finally understood. You know, I poked fun at him so much when I first saw his holy form because it looks so out there. His holy form is referred to as the justice of God, but his eyes do this weird like pattern thing, and I finally get it. They're jail cells. They're like the bars in a jail cell. Get it? Because he's the jail?
Yeah.
It took me like 4 years, but I finally understood it. Oh, come on. You guys weren't really thinking about Quillhay. Most of you probably even forgot who the hell he was. Stern Ritter K, BG9. BG9 is one of the very few Stern Ritters that we do not know the power, but we do know their letter. He is K. My opinion is that it's going to be the knowledge from what we find out about him. Up until the reveal of Pernida, I would have said easily BG9 is the weirdest Stern Ritter because it's a robot.
It's a robot, yeah.
Like, I can't make this shit up. There's a robot Nazi Quincy in Bleach fighting against gods of death in a feudal Japan-era setting.
Yes. Hey, they did it in Naruto with one of the pains.
Do you? No? Okay, well then you're totally into anime then. Congratulations.
Yay!
So it's kind of ambiguous whether or not BG9 was
like a strange
at one point, or if he was like a cyborg, or if he was something created by somebody else. We don't freaking know. He stated to Soy Phone that I've never breathed a single time, so maybe he was never human. Maybe he was created in a lab somewhere. Don't really know how that means he can use Quincy techniques and Yuha could bestow a letter on him, but Yuha is basically Quincy Jesus. I guess he could do it. Like, I say this random hunk of scrap metal is a Quincy. God damn it, it's a Quincy. Fought against Soy Phone in the first invasion, stole her Jakuho Raikkoben, which it never used, although that would have been pretty cool to see a robot, cyborg, android, whatever, whip out Jakuho Raikkoben and launch against it. It fights usually by using these tendrils that it can hit pretty much anywhere out of its body, and it can apparently spawn weapons out of nowhere as well, as it did with its Quincy minigun, which was immediately shredded by Soy Phone, so we didn't get to really see what it could do, but once again, a Quincy with a minigun. It also proceeded to pretty much tentacle rape Soy Phone. Hey, what else would you call this scene? I'm not being offensive to Soy Phone. Wait, yeah, of course. Of course I'm being offensive to Soy Phone. I'm sorry, guys. I had a little brain fart there. Okay, yeah, so tentacle raped Soy Phone before the hollow pill arrived on Marechio's side, threw it over to Soy Phone. She got her Bankai back and then blew BG9 right out of the fucking sky with one shot from Raikkoben, and eventually managed to use its own holy form to recover the same way King Du did, and they were both sentenced by Yuha. Funny enough, when they were both on trial, about to be punished by Jugo, and we didn't actually see BG9 killed by Jugo, so maybe he could have just been like reprogrammed. We don't know. But between Kangdu and BG9 was the one that was pleading for its life. Like, please, Your Majesty, we might have been defeated, but we recovered using our holy form. We can fight for you. And I'm sitting there like, okay, so between Kangdu and the robot is expressing more humanity. So we don't know what the hell this thing is. We don't know if there's going to be a BG10. You've been improved to be better than before. We don't know if it ever used to be human. We don't even know what the BG stands for. Stern Ritter L, the love, Pepe Waka Brada. Oh yeah, we're really getting into the real shit right now. Okay, so Pepe is a morbidly obese man.
Very strange.
Seems to be of Indian origin, I would guess. Get it? Because he's like the love guru. He's got a pretty epic beard, which... Damn, I love that beard.
Yeah,
he's got
cool.
some rockin' shades and a staff with an eyeball and some wings on it. Don't really know what that's used for. It was hinted at that he can apparently use this eye to see people, but he never utilized it in battle. And he usually floats around on this Petri dish.
It's annoying because, when they do stuff like that. This thing has the ability to do this.
Anyway, his ability
and
is
then they don't do anything with it.
Him to, and I'm not
don't see it in action.
Shoot out a love beam, as in he literally puts his hands together and shoots out a heart-shaped beam, like out of fucking, like, I don't know, Sailor Moon or some shit. And any being that comes in contact with this that has any form of autonomy or sentience, so it doesn't have to be Shinigami or a Hollow. It can be a Zanpakuto spirit. It could be a zombie that's being manipulated by Giselle. Anything that comes in contact with it that's pretty much sentient will be stricken and fallen deeply in love with Pepe. Now, the love is very interesting here because it's not simple puppetry. It's not like Zomari's ability where he could just, you know, I'm manipulating you like a puppet.
And then control you and do
the person
what you want them
that
to do.
is hit by this beam genuinely has fallen in love with Pepe, and this love can range depending on the person. He used it on Meninas McAllen, and that love seemed to be more romantic love. That seemed to be like, oh, I want to suck your dick, Pepe-sama. You know, and she was like drooling, and yeah, that was kind of going there. She turned thirsty, but when he used it on Shuhei, it was more of like an admiring love. It was more like, you know, he replaced Kensei or Tozen in Shuhei's mind. It's like, I gotta do this for Pepe-sama's sake. You know, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit more complex than just standard puppetry, but it basically just comes down to, if you come in contact with the love beam, you will be manipulated by Pepe no matter, you know, even if like in Shuhei's case where he was beaten into the ground and practically rendered unconscious, he was still like, must help Pepe. Beard too sexy. But yeah, he fought against Byakuya really quickly. This fight was kind of random. He Byakuya, then he shifted over to the zombies that Mayuri was controlling, and then he was eventually killed by Latato. He was eaten alive. His holy form is God's Oh God, why? Why do you have to show that every time, even though I just brought that up? Oh, man. Okay, his holy form is one of the ones that actually changes his appearance. It's God's love. He gets Cupid wings, and he gets a diaper, and he regurgitates a holy bow out of his mouth, and that diaper does not leave anything to the imagination.
No, it does not. Wow.
Anyway, he can manipulate his powers a little bit more freely in this form. He has a technique called Love Rope, which he's able to shoot out. Just basically a bunch of hearts strung together.
The thing down his head looks very similar to the design of...
yeah, that was pretty much it, because immediately after that, he was pummeled by Mayuri zombie Kensei into the dirt, and then consumed by Latato, because he controlled Meninas and allowed Meninas to punch and deck Latato and knock her out. So it's like, Latato was pretty pissed off at him at this point, so she just like, nom, right on his flesh. And apparently he didn't taste too good, you know, going crazy that, you know, this guy was not very palatable. But, yeah, he's dead now, so we can all have a choice there. Sternritter M, the Miracle, Gerard
basically
Valkyrie. Oh yeah, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. He is the Miracle. Gerard Valkyrie is a member of the Schutzstaff in the Elite Sternritter Guard, and he is also known as the Heart of the Soul King. What does that mean exactly? Well, other than the fact that he's really fucking hard to kill, we don't really know at this point. He takes the appearance like this Valkyrie, gladiatorial Thor-looking motherfucker.
Yeah,
looks really badass, honestly. Probably like my most favorite Sternritter in terms of just like design alone. He's really cool. He has like the shield and the sword, and he's like, have at thee! He can manipulate his cape.
Foul beast shall fall before me.
Advancing, interesting ability. Don't really know. Maybe it's a Reishi cape.
It is very Thor-esque, like old school comic.
When he releases the Miracle, he basically converts all the damage he's taken while he's in his normal form into a change in size, which he refers to as his God size. So he took all this damage from Byakuya and Renji, just pounding him into the ground, and Byakuya basically just like shredded his head apart, and then he activated it, and he grew to the size of a skyscraper. So that's already pretty, you know, intimidating enough. He can like tear off buildings like toothpicks, and just by blowing, he can create huge gusts that knock their opponents away like a freaking tornado. But even in this form, he is not done yet. Kenpachi shows up on the scene, and he starts hacking off Gerard's limbs, and whatever limb he gets hacked off just reformed by light erupting from his body, and whatever limb he gets hacked off is restored to be even stronger than before. So this fight ended up being a three-way battle with the captains, Byakuya, Toshiro, and Kenpachi, and I just want to go through all the things that had to happen to even resort to where we are right now in the series. is not even close to being dead yet, but this is all the stuff he's tanked so far, okay? So right after Byakuya and Renji pound him in the ground, he goes into God size. Kenpachi, well, first off, Toshiro shows up, freezes him a little bit, but that doesn't really seem to do a lot of damage to him. Then Kenpachi shows up, hacks off his arm, you know, he repairs that with light. Kenpachi then proceeds to go into his Bankai form, which hacks him up even more, basically rips off his entire arm, and then slices him from head to groin, completely in half.
Through the middle.
He repairs himself then, goes into his, I guess, his full standing, which means heaven's authority, God's authority, divine authority, or something of that such. He gets restored once more, and then Toshiro goes into his fully matured Bankai form, freezes him solid. Byakuya then proceeds to use a hidden technique of Senkei to jam all 1,000 Senkei swords directly into Gerard, shattering his entire body, head included, and then, even after all this, he repairs himself once more, the light erupting from the sky itself, repairing his body into this huge behemoth that's even bigger
the
than
only way they managed to get rid of him when Yuha summons everyone's abilities back to him? Isn't that how that was done? Because that was very asshole-esque, like Madara and Naruto, that they got rid of him. Ow, my legs numb. Pretty sure that's what happened, isn't it? Yuha then all of a sudden summoned everyone's abilities back to him.
Like, I'm the heart, so I will never stop beating, because gods can never die, or some shit like that. Anyway, moving on. Stern Ritter N, Robert Akutron. Who? Alright, so Robert Akutron, also known as the Colonel Sanders Quincy, is,
Want some chicken?
an elderly man, maybe like in his mid-60s, uses guns, so that's cool.
Okay.
He's got a kick-ass, like, Commissioner Gordon mustache, glasses. That's pretty much all we know about him. You know what? I feel so bad for Robert. For the longest time, we didn't even know his name. Kubo wouldn't even give us that courtesy. And he was the last Stern Ritter letter to be revealed. He was Stern Ritter letter N. We still don't even know what the N stood for. Maybe nothing. But yeah, he appeared in the first invasion, and he fought against Shunsui, and at this time we thought he was pretty badass. I mean, he's the reason that Shunsui got his eyes shot out. Just remember that. Every time you see Shunsui, Captain Commander, with that eye patch, that was caused by Robert Akutron, motherfucker. And after that invasion, he makes a very brief appearance when Uryu was announced as the successor. And then the next time he shows up is when he fights against Byakuya, which is he is one-shotted off panel. And then the last time we see him is when he is confronting Latato. He, points his gun at her, and then he's like all looking sullen and depressed because he knows what's coming. He knows that Yuha did not take them to the Soul Palace.
Left them behind,
and he knows what's going to happen next. And that is, of course, Yuha's holy selection, which sends down a light, which any Stern Ritter that comes in contact with will be ripped asunder, and then it comes in contact with Robert, which he is immediately assimilated back into Yuha, which basically means that his power is assimilated back into him, and his body is basically reduced to a skeleton, and then he collapses and he dies.
Bye, Robert.
Now, we did get some interesting things here from Robert before he did die. He did say that he was in allegiance to Yuha longer than, like, the newbies, like Latato. He's like, you don't know how scary Yuha can really be.
I've been here longer.
So I'm really hoping that in this flashback that we're probably going to get coming up of the previous Stern Ritter, and what life was like, maybe back during, like, when Soken was a Stern Ritter, we're probably going to get something. I hope Robert shows up. Maybe Robert and Soken were, like, good friends. That'd be really cool, right? We do get to see his holy form. It's Grimanuel, or Walk of God. We don't really know the full extent there. His wings take the appearance of like a segmented, sort of blocky Tetris pattern there, and it seems to increase his speed exponentially because he used it to blast a hole right through Shunsui's face.
So, yeah,
and the last thing I need to mention about Robert before we move on is he has a briefcase. You don't get to see it all that often, but he's holding a briefcase. What's in that briefcase? Is it more ties? Is it just extra ammo for his guns? Or maybe it's the secret for defeating Yuha Bach once and for all.
Just carries it around with him.
Or maybe it's just a healthy array of mustache combs, because, you gotta keep that shit pristine. Stern Ritter O, the Overkill, Driscoll Bercy. Alright, so interesting fun fact. Driscoll is technically the first Stern Ritter to ever appear in this entire series. And aside from Uryu, of course. And the reason I say that is because we have him introduced at like the second chapter of the new arc when he is in Yamamoto's office, and he's wearing a cloak and a mask, so we don't get to see him, but he's later revealed to be the Stern Ritter that did kill the former lieutenant of the 1st Division, Chojiro Sasakibe, so he was there, and and there you go. Driscoll's ability is the overkill, which allows him to basically kill opponents and get stronger for everybody he kills. He stated that he killed up to 100 people when he fought against Shuhei, and that gave him quite a bit. Chojuro was way stronger than when by Driscoll. So one can discern there that the Quincy's, I don't think this is ever going to come up again, but just an interesting fact. When the Quincy's steal a Bankai, they can't manipulate it or control it the same way as the Shinigami could, because they don't have all the training for it, but they can still use their base power.
Use it, I suppose.
So
it's the same with any technique, isn't it? You've got to
not the best mistake
use it a few times before you know how to fully utilize it.
Not just Lieutenant, but... And now you're standing there like, I'm using his Bankai against you. What do you think, Head Captain? Yeah, probably not going to end up too well for Driscoll. And he gets burned to a fucking cinder.
See ya.
He burns him down to the bone, and then he burns his bones to ash. That's what you get for pissing off Yama.
Don't do it.
Aside from that, we don't really get to see much about him. We don't need... But I think he was pretty much just there for Yamamoto to vent and to show off Chojiro's Bankai. But yeah, that's all we get from him, so moving on. I'm not going to say that she is my Stern Ritter waifu. Although it's kind of difficult to,
you have the body
kind of follow that up, because it's like she's adorable and she's cute and she's got huge... That's all her power really amounts to. It's not really beyond that. Although there is an interesting aspect of it where she can lift up like whole buildings just with like her normal body without changing it at all. Accordingly, she doesn't think she's dead though. So maybe she'll show up later. She had her powers, swollen up by Yuha, of course, but we don't really know what's up with her. Tiff is Hearts. That's what her highly Bogan takes the appearance of as well. So yeah, that's pretty much me. Stern Ritter Q, the question. Berenice Gabriele, one of the three Stern Ritters that was defeated. See one panel of a flashback of what he was capable of, and that is it. And yes, I painted nails. I'm thinking it's a chick. Well, here's the thing. In some of the unofficial translation pronouns, but when you had the official Viz release on 57, I think it was, I don't have that one, else I would show it to you, they use male pronouns and refer to Berenice as a male.
Oh, right, okay.
And then later on, you have a full-page spread that Kubo drew of all the Stern Ritters, and you can see Berenice way off to the right, kind of obscure. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a woman... I'm going to put this hat back on now because my hair looks ridiculous. I'm good for anything. Your powers are weak and pitiful, and you have a small dick, and I will completely dominate you, that kind of shit, and then the opponent will actually believe it, like, wait a minute, maybe I am weak, I don't think I can do this. However, it was used against Kenpachi Zaraki right after he fought against another Stern Ritter, which will be coming to next. Who had a sonic base, but didn't really get to hear what Bernice's power was, and he just made a joke. He's like, I couldn't even hear him, so I just cut his fucking throat and ended his life.
Weren't listening, so he's dead.
Drops him at fucking Yuha's feet. There you go. That's Bernice Gabriele, Stern Ritter Q. I really wish there'd be more of him, at all, but pretty interesting character. Stern Ritter R, the Roar, Jerome Geisbeck. One of the Stern Ritters that Kenpachi defeated in the first invasion and only made the one appearance in the series. Already posthumously, he was dead when he first appeared. Kenpachi dropped
dead on arrival
at Yuha and Hashwell's feet. Jerome apparently was the first person that Kenpachi fought against, making him his first Quincy opponent ever, I guess. His ability of the... allowed him to transform into a large gorilla-like creature, blowing away all of his opponents with a sonic reverberation of... Oh, wait, no, shit, I said gorilla.
No.
Alright, sorry about that. Okay, he transforms into a very large African mammal. Yeah. Complete with the fangs and the hair all over his body and his sort of surge of, like, wind or like a tornado. And Kenpachi basically just cut him right in half, and in front of Yuha was different from the body that he's shown in the flashback. But yeah, that's pretty much all that happened there with Jerome. Not much to say in terms of the holy...
Weird, man.
Here we go, boy!
Wrestling.
Yeah, go for it! WrestleMania Soul Society 2016! So Master Masculine is a Mexican luchador who's the Stern Ritter, which are German, but whatever. We don't have time for that right now because he is a hardcore wrestling big buffy dude.
Is.
I mean, Scott Steiner ain't got nothing on this guy around the ass. He was able to pretty much knock the shit out of
have the ball just
without even really trying there much at all, and Ikaku and Yumichika as well. And then Kensei showed up and started to have a real fight with them, and at first it seemed like Kensei was dominating the fight. But this is all changed around when Superstar hears some cheering from a loyal fan. Upon hearing this cheering cheering his strength elf because the dude clearly isn't human, but he also doesn't seem to exhibit any sort of powers on his own. He's sort of like Masty Masculine's support character that's only there to, you know, cheer for him because otherwise the superstar power would be kind of useless. We don't really know. We never really saw what would happen if, like, whether it be, you know, a miner just, you know, got blown away by one of Kensei's punches, he gets blown up, he gets set on fire, he gets fucking sliced almost completely in half. You know, James's cheering will fix that shit right up. So one would assume that in order to take out Masty Masculine, you just have to kill James first. Right, well, that's a lot harder than it freaking sounds because while James doesn't have any physics, no matter what you do to him, you know, Rose showed up and basically just sliced off his head, but then another head just kind of popped out. Reggie took it one step further and sliced him into little cubes of mincemeat, and the little cubes of mincemeat started crawling around reproducing. Even after Mask himself completely incinerates, Masty Masculine is still alive. James will return. In terms of techniques just alone, Masty Masculine easily has the widest range of differently named techniques anyway. His star headbutt, his rocket star headbutt. He can fire a laser out of his head, which is one of the techniques that he didn't name for some reason. God damn, you think you can fire a laser out of your head? You think you would name that shit?
That's the coolest thing you could do.
Though, he also has a killer fist technique. Star laser. Enraged, a star cheering, and that's not even getting into his goddamn holy form yet. Jeez, man.
Take a breath.
Overpowered much? Well, I guess it's all physical techniques at the end of the day, so if you're strong enough to beat him down, no problem, as did with Renji. While he's in his holy form, his cape appears to take the forms of wings, allowing him to fly at jet speeds, and the Starflash Supernova, which is like his ultimate finishing move. It's while in this form that he can also use his 1 mile battle arts, where every single physically strong dude, but after Renji showed up, went into his new Bankai, and Zaga Teppoed him out of existence. Just the dynamic between him and James, and got to see how much he fucked up Rose and Kensei. It was a really... So, you want to know what I think about Shaz? I'll tell you what I think about Shaz.
I want to know what you think about Shaz.
You hear that? You hear that in the background? Think about it. Just shut up for a second. Just listen. Yeah. There's nothing there. Okay. There's no background music. He doesn't even deserve background music, okay? Wow. Shaz appeared in the canon of this series for a single chapter in, like, 3 panels. That was it. That was it. Nothing more. No flashbacks. No, most of the information from his character, in fact, that we even know he's called Stern Ritter Sigma, comes from the 13 Blades data book. I did a whole video about that, so if you want the whole story about Shaz Domino, if you really care to. However, Gremmy was kind of a dumb shit and didn't think for a second, wait a second, if he can heal all of his organs up and they replaced with the imaginary organs to real organs, then Shaz became... He is just decided, you know what, fine, I'll give him the letter Sigma. Yeah, okay, your letter Sigma, there you go. So he became Stern Ritter Sigma, or the Stigma. His ability was basically this. Okay, I see we got to the very headstrong, angry, sexy character in the Stern Ritter. Took us a while to get there. I mean, maybe you could say Bambietta, but yeah, she's a little bit more hot-headed there. So Candace Catnip, interesting name, I know.
Yes, it is,
she has the ability of the Thunderbolt, which gives her electrical-based abilities. However, she doesn't seem to use these in any clever way because she has, like, the hot-headedness of Bakugo from My Hero Academia, in that anyone that even looks at her funny, says something weird, messes her, messes up her hair. I'm gonna fry that fucking asshole, you know, that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
So she fights against Ichigo when he appears after the Soul Palace training, so, you know, obviously this Catnip, her powers are more, you know, the physical injury type, you know, more so than Latato. Around with her, you know, just kind of like, oh, hey, you use 2 swords too, and it turns out, no, she actually has a bunch of gigajoules that are in her techniques. She has Galvano Blast, which is like a normal shot from her High League Bogan, which takes the form of a Thunderbolt. Her Galvano Javelin, which is just a more enhanced version of that. And her ultimate technique, if you do the horrible execution, but with electricity.
Yeah.
So it's electrocution. Get it? Funny.
Mind
clever.
blown.
Anyway, ultimate technique, but since she used it, didn't really end much there. She ended up losing an arm, which was later recovered through Giselle's means. That probably wasn't really difficult. And the last time we saw her, I think Giselle might have mentioned, Latato mentioned that she was injured and defeated, but she didn't say she was dead. So after the Holy Selection, maybe she is dead. I'm not sure. She was already pretty beaten up with her fight against Ichigo, and then Byakuya whooped her ass. So if she's dead, I wouldn't be really surprised, honestly. Stern Ritter U, the underbelly. Najakoop! Here comes Stern Ritter U, he will kill you because he's Najakoop! Okay, so the crazy ass hair of the Stern Ritter army goes to Stern Ritter U, Najakoop. I mean, seriously, how much do you, Candace talks about her hair, how long do you think this dude have to spend in the morning?
That design, man.
Thompson's water seal to keep that shit shit, you know, steady. Anyway, he's a very lanky, dark-skinned kind of dude. He's got the visor going on, and his teeth have like a black and white sort of piano key pattern going on. So he's a pretty cool character. He originally appeared in he was one of the first few Stern Raiders to actually be introduced, but actually like one of the last to have his power actually explained. Right. He appeared in the first invasion and fought against Rose, and Rose looked like he was pretty, you know, pissed off because, you know, Izuru had been defeated. So it looked like, oh man, Rose is going to whoop some ass. But we don't really get to see what happens with that fight there. He appears later on perfectly unharmed, so I'm assuming he didn't really do much to Nanana there. His ability of the Understand is quite simple. The longer time that Nanana observes his opponents, the more time he understands what his opponent's full potential and abilities are, and the longer he witnesses what they can do. I mean, I don't even think he has to see them doing the techniques. Just watching Renji sleep, that sounded a little bit creepy, but just watching Renji sleep for a few hours was enough for him to be like, oh, okay, I know everything this guy can do. You're screwed now. But basically what the ability really means, and I'm not sure if this is because of the visor he's wearing or because of his just normal eyesight, but he can see somebody's Reiatsu network, which is like a chakra network, but, you know, more bleachy. He can see this network as like a grid pattern, you know, it's like laid over the person, kind of like infrared, like special vision or whatever, and he can tell where the weak points in the Reiatsu are, and then he can like shoot these like, you know, injections, or like, I think he calls them like the morphine patterns, like syringes, like pressure points. He can poke inside the Reiatsu network and then open them up to a large, and I guess it kills the opponent, you know, if he hits them enough times. His biggest achievement is he managed, get this, he managed to knock out Sosuke Aizen for 5 minutes. That was more than the Gote 13 can do working at full power. Granted, Aizen was bound with his Reiatsu clocks, and he was in the chair of awesomeness, but that's still a pretty damn good feat. Like, wow. He died immediately afterwards, though, of course. Basby shot him in the heart with his burner finger after he did the thing that he needed him to do. Because Basby was trying to, you know, ask for help of the Shinigami, and I guess they realized, you know, Aizen's kind of fucking things up, so let's take him out first, and then, alright, thanks, Nanana, and then shoots him in the back, and I'm assuming Nanana is dead from this point onward. He had his holy form stolen by Yuha before he had a chance to use it, so we don't know what's up with that, but way to go, Nanana, you did what Shinji and Shunsui and Toshu and everybody couldn't do during Karakura Town. You managed to contend with Aizen for 5 minutes.
That's
good job, buddy.
Good going. That is. Stern
Raider V, the Visionary, Gremi Tome.
So weird. Here we go.
I hate you.
Oh, wow, here we go.
So Gremi, as you can probably imagine, I'm not particularly fond of. If you want to really know why, go watch this video. It's titled very aptly, Gremi Sucks, and here's why. So that'll give you a better idea there. His ability of the Visionary basically is right out of an episode of SpongeBob. He can create anything
out of the
he wants.
Imagination.
Living, dead, inanimate, out of straight up fantasy, or even beyond the laws of physics or science, surely with his imagination. We're SpongeBob in this shit to the 5th degree. Creating a giant building out of the earth? Why not? That seems simple. Water prison no jutsu? Why not?
Yeah, do
giant hands? Who cares? Summoning the vacuum of space in a meteorite? Who cares about physics? How about completely sentient autonomous life that you can snuff out in an instant? Well, who needs that when you can just snuff out life altogether like he did with Rose and Kensei? How about predator missiles? Assault rifles? Who cares? Oh shit, no, I said assault rifles. No, damn it.
Put the hat back on. There we go.
Okay, we done? Okay, we got more important stuff to talk about right now. Like this annoying blonde kid. Now, I know what Kubo was going for. It's like trying to come up with a good opponent that can actually give Kenpachi Zaraki a run for his money. Not easy.
That is difficult.
Unless you're a giant hand, but that's beside the point. So he was like, oh man, I'm going to create
someone that can
Stern Raider
that
can literally make anything out of nothing, and then he'll fight against Kenpachi. It'll just be a battle of just, you know, I can cut anything. Meteorite, who cares? No Zarashi. Vacuum of space, I cut the vacuum of space.
Take that, space.
A bunch of explosions going on. He can create duplicates of himself, and the duplicates are able to create more imagination because they have the same ability as him.
So stupid.
Really
it is
cool
stupid.
Dude, in terms of abilities, just he was shitty at using them. Also, Gremi has a few flaws also. If he actually imagines his own death, which is very very likely to happen because Gremmy, not the sharpest tool in the shed, he can actually end up killing himself if he thinks about his actual death. So you got to be careful there. It's a very, very dangerous ability. Summoning a meteor,
especially when you're fighting someone.
Kind of short-sighted when you think that would probably have killed you too. But yeah, I guess Gremmy can imagine pretty much anything he wants into reality except a brain in his fucking head.
Damn.
Actually, that's not exactly untrue. He doesn't have to imagine the brain because he already has one of those, but he does have to imagine a head because Gremmy, as it turns out, M. Night Shyamalan plot twist of the century, he's a brain in the jar.
Yeah.
He's a
brain in a jar. Yeah.
Just brain in a jar.
And then uses his imagination to create everything around him.
How is it alive? Is it just like fluid? Is it like from Futurama, like where you have the talking heads, like the liquid to keep things alive? Because if it's just a brain without any sort of life support, then it's just gonna rot and kind of die.
Don't
how did you
enlist? You're overthinking it. It's out of
Did he break into Gozaburo Kaiba's laboratory and he's like, oh, this looks like the brain of a really whiny teenager. Okay, I'll give you the power of V, and then he creates the body. I mean,
that's interesting when you think about that. How did he choose it?
Look, I don't like Gremmy, but can somebody please, just for sanity's sake, please write a fan fiction about how Yuha discover, like, where the brain in the jar was at to begin with.
Genius. Like,
how did Yuha discover it? Why did Yuha think it was necessary to give it a letter, and then everything else up to this point? Just for closure's sake. Because that is the most random of random shit. I mean, yeah, Pernida was a giant hand, but Soul King, you're kind of dealing with the realms of gods at that point, so I'm a little bit lenient.
This is just a brain.
Brain in a jar, what? Ironically, despite claiming himself as the strongest Sternritter, Gremmy actually never showed off his holy form, which I think is a blessing in disguise there, because I don't even want to know all the crazy things he could do in his holy form that he wouldn't end up doing because he's an idiot.
Could you imagine? Get it?
So it's probably a good thing we didn't get to see that. Sternritter W, the Wind, Nyanzul Weisel. Here we have another Sternritter that didn't really get a lot of screen time, only showed up for 2 chapters this time, 597 and 598. Nyanzul's appearance, pretty honestly standard. The only difference is that he has 2 tongues. That's the thing that Kubo decided to go, this guy, long hair, he wears kind of like a bed sheet over him that doesn't really have sleeves, and kind of has like a ending like you have on curtains, like whatever, and he has 2 tongues. That'll make him seem unique. He can eat ice cream really fast, though, so that's
okay, then.
Nyanzul's ability is the Wind, not the Wind, and it allows him to basically bend and twist and contort and crook anything that comes within his vicinity or anything that he so chooses. He was actually hiding in the shadows the entire time Yuha was invading the Soul Palace, and, all the members of the Royal Guard were trying to attack Yuha, and every single attack was just going around him. Even attacks that were like, water were still just flowing around Yuha. So that's the potential of the Wind.
Pretty good.
Even if Nyanzul is not like directly witnessing an attack, just by pure instinct, or he has like, I feel like there's someone trying to attack me from behind, he can still twist and bend that as well. His twisting powers don't just go to simply like going around himself or around the thing he wants to protect. He can actually twist it so much it actually just pops, basically cuts the guy in half.
Yeah.
He did this to a bunch of Senjumaru's BDSM squad, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the ability to twist and contort and mess with things, that just kind of seems like a more advanced form of Pernida's ability, because Pernida's was nerves. It actually had to invade the thing first. Nyanzul can just kind of like bend and twist it as much as he wants without actually having physical contact. So, and we saw these characters like one after another. Like we saw Nyanzul show up, and then he was killed by Senjumaru, and then the Royal Guard shows up, and then you get to see Pernida's abilities for the first time. So it's just like whatever. Nyanzul is killed by Senjumaru, as I said. She basically rewove his outfits using her needle, and then he got stabbed from a bunch of directions because he didn't see it coming, and that's the downfall of it. Even though he doesn't actually need to see the opponent, or he still has to know an attack is coming.
Yeah, he needs to be aware of it.
An attack is coming. Yeah. If it's so discreet enough, then you lose. So I guess the stealth force would be a good opponent for him. Really, we don't get to see his holy form at all.
Like how everything's bent and contorted in the background for that as well. Very, very clever. Very well thought out.
About here. Although he might have been the Sternritter that fought against Ukitake during the first invasion, or it might have possibly have been Askin as well. But we didn't really get to see Nyanzul until like 2 chapters right before he died, so I like to think he did fight against Ukitake to give him a little bit more street cred, but probably not. Sternritter X, the X-axis, Lilia Bell.
So weird.
Alright, so Lilia is the fourth and final member of Yuha's Schutzstaffen, but he is not the last in terms of rank because he is the first Sternritter that Yuha created. We don't or gave the power to.
Right.
So Lilia, first Sternritter ever gave power by Yuha, and therefore his position is seen as kind of like ironclad in the Sternritters. He's seen up there, maybe on a position kind of similar to Hashwolf, I would imagine. I'm surprised by that because Hashwolf was called the Sternritter Grandmaster, but then you have Lilia coming up. So does Lilia rank higher than Hashwolf, or on the, like, the same level, or what's up with that? Or maybe like Hashwolf is like the right-hand man of, you know, of Yuha, like his butler, and then, you know, Lilia is like the higher, you know, tier member of the Schutzstaffen, and the Schutzstaffen kind of is the higher tier of the whole Sternritter in general. But his abilities are pretty damn OP, to say the least. So, while having access to his full abilities, using this giant fuck-off rifle that Lilia has called his diagram, he can basically shoot and destroy anything. When I say shoot and destroy anything, I mean, like, it doesn't matter how many blockades you put in front of him and his target, it'll just go right through.
Go through and get the target.
The X-axis basically translates out to the peripherator of all creation, or the one that destroys all creation. So if, you know, he's point A and his target is point B, you can throw up as many awesome shields in front of him in between that, but it's like a straight-up laser beam, like connecting the dots. You know, it's going to go straight through, and it's going to destroy anything that he puts his sights on. Lilia has a very particular mark on his left eye, which is in the form of an X and a circle. The mark is very significant because whenever Lilia's in a battle, and he's kind of like being pushed up against a wall, like he's being bested, he can open his left eye very briefly, and every single time he opens this eye, attacks basically pass right through him. So, you know, he's about to get cut up by Shunsui shadows, he just opens his eye very briefly, attack goes through him.
That's cool.
But if it happens 3 times, he's allowed to keep it open, and his true power awakens in the form of his release. Zyrale, shit gets really nuts. He basically has this whole messenger of gods sort of Mercury thing going on. You'll see about that more in a second. He grows these wings, and he has these really odd transformations. Like, he basically takes the form of an angel, but it's seen like multiple times. He can like change the form he's in pretty much at will to make like landing gear or whatever. He can fire lasers out of this, and apparently he can immobilize his opponent through some method. We only saw him do that once, where after he transformed, Shunsui couldn't move, and then, you know, he punctured him full of holes, but he never really used it afterwards, so I don't know what the hell that was up with. But even if in this form he manages to get damaged enough, like when Shunsui went into his Bankai and used his last Bankai technique where he cut Lilia's head clean off and then had it explode, that didn't kill him either, because it turns out Lilia is basically made of light. He's also an owl.
That was weird. That's what I'm talking about. The owl thing was like,
yeah, just go with that. His appearance is basically taking a lot of references from biblical texts. So a lot of people might say, you know, he's not an owl. He's supposed to be taken out of this figure from mythology or from biblical, you know, text or whatever. Like, okay, fine. I mean, he's an owl, but, you know, whatever you want to say, man. I like mythology too, but, you know, he's an owl. So, right, so he goes on and on about how he's a god in this form, or his abilities are pretty damn close to Yuha's, and he can fire off like light lasers, you know, from different parts of his body that have tremendous destructive force. Like, half the freaking Varvel is in ruins right now, not really because of the Shinigami, but because of just Lilia's fight, you know, blasting off lasers and trumpet blasts all the freaking time. So yeah, pretty intimidating too. Now, as I said, he's made of light, so physical injuries do nothing. Honestly speaking, I think he's invincible. The only way that you could possibly maybe defeat Lilia is if you had some sort of weapon or sword or shield or mirror from some sort of ancient clan that had the ability, the sole function of defeating gods. I don't really know where you would find something like that, but maybe Nanao knows. Yeah, so through his Shinken Hyakyoken, Nanao's family, Zanpakuto, the Issei family's hidden treasure, Lilia fires a light attack at her. She uses that to reflect the attack right back at him, which is the only thing that can really damage him. Cuts him in half very briefly before he explodes into feathers, and then floats back down to the Soul Society. Even this, at the end of the day, didn't manage to kill him, although it did remove his holy halo that apparently had a lot of his power, so his power was greatly diminished. But upon arriving back in the Soul Society, he transformed into a bunch of death flamingos and is now currently engaged in combat with Izuru Kira or Cyborg Kira, and possibly Aizen might be getting in on this battle too. So Lilia's still around. He's not dead yet. Probably honestly, probably Kubo just didn't kill him, so the people on the ground still had something to do. Against, really, I think that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, it's Lilia. Sternritter Y, the yourself. Lloyd, Royd, and Lloyd. Wait, no. Lloyd, and Lloyd. Yeah, okay. Lloyd is their last name. It's spelled L-L-O-Y-D, and Lloyd's first name is only spelled with one L, so that's how you know the difference. It's the only Sternritter letter aside from A that includes two members. Yuha and you share the letter A there, and they got some bit of a backstory too. So apparently, and this is something that's very interesting because it just brings into vogue into the question of how Yuha really bestows the powers onto the Sternritters. So Lloyd and Royd had this power while they were in their mother's womb. Before they were even born, they had the ability of the yourself, which basically allowed them to transform into another human being. And they were copying themselves constantly while being in the womb. So by the time they were born, the doctor and the nurse messed up and mixed up who was who because they looked exactly identical. And basically throughout the rest of their life, they didn't really even care because so Royd could really be Lloyd and vice versa. By the age of 5, they figured out their power, what was going on, and by the age of 12, they really understood, the full ramifications of how they could copy people. So basically, Lloyd is the one that can copy. They can both copy appearances of anybody. All right, so they can both do that. But Lloyd, in particular, has an affinity for copying strengths and abilities from people. We don't know anything if he can copy the level of strength, I guess. I mean, Lloyd fought against Kenpachi, and apparently he was on the same level as Kenpachi, but Kenpachi's Kenpachi, so he just had to get stronger than himself. Yeah. So I guess, it's kind of an OP power, but I guess because he's always getting stronger. Somebody that's like Soyphone's Jocko Raikkonen, it would be at the same level as her. I guess, going by this logic. And then you had Royd Lloyd, who could copy, on top of appearance, memories and emotions and personality and more things that just go along with the brain there. So as I said, during the first invasion, Lloyd was the one that fought against Kenpachi, transformed into Kenpachi. Kenpachi killed him, dropped him at the foot of Yuha. That's where his story ends there. Royd, however, has a more integral role in Yuha's grand scheme. While Yuha went to go see Aizen in the underground prison under the 1st Division barracks, he left Royd behind to contend with Yamamoto. Royd took the appearance of Yuha he had the same abilities, just not at the same level of power, but it was also crucial that he had the same memories as Yuha because Yamamoto actually fought against Yuha before 1,000 years ago, and he would actually, I think, notice if Royd didn't remember who Yamamoto really was. So that was very important there for Yuha's plan. Yamamoto ended up going full Bankai range mode on Royd, so I think he got the shaft there. He got pretty much pwned, got his entire, torso basically burned out of existence by Yamamoto's North Bankai. It was around this time that Royd let it slip that he wasn't really Yuha, and then the real Yuha appeared on the battlefield, and then, commended Royd for doing such a good job, and then he immediately fucking head, because, he's Yuha, he's the boss.
Once you're done with, I don't need you anymore.
I respect you for what you did, but
you're dead now.
I also gotta kill you, it's respectable. And Royd thought it was too, because his last dying words were like, I'm being praised by His Majesty, what an honor, and then Yuha just, boom, you're dead, boy. So yeah, that's that. We don't get to see either of their holy forms or their releases. We don't know if they could copy other holy forms or releases. That'd be interesting to see, but we didn't get to see it.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go. There's the Sternritter Y twins. Sternritter Z, the zombie, Giselle Guel. Alright, we finally made it to the last Sternritter, everybody, and it is a freaky, creepy, deaky one. Oh. Yeah, we're going there. Giselle is the last member of the Sternritter clique, along with Latato, Bambietta, and Meninas, and Candace. And her ability is the zombie. Okay, zombies are cool. They're kind of a thing right now in pop culture, so yeah, I can get on board that train. Although her zombies aren't really the same as, 28 Days Later, disease zombies, or the Night of the Living Dead crawling out of the, Earth zombies. There's not enough movies about zombies actually coming out of cemeteries anymore. It's all about diseases now.
It is, viruses and stuff.
On that, freaking AMC. Fear the Walking Dead. Have some zombies actually coming out of the ground or something. That'd be cool. But anyway, yeah. So her abilities are blood-based. Whenever her blood splatters on an opponent, or whenever she deliberately, splatters their blood on them, they become her zombies. Now, it depends on the person exactly, if it's a Shinigami or a Quincy. If it's a Shinigami, it doesn't matter if the person is alive or dead. If it's a Quincy, she can only turn them into zombies when they're already dead, as was the case with Bambietta. She actually had to, after the fight with Sajin, Bambietta was pretty injured, but Giselle actually had to deliver the coup de grace herself, and then allow the blood to drip on Bambietta, which turned her into a zombie that really desperately desire Gigi's blood. Yeah,
blood.
She totally just wants to suck her blood. Nothing more
else,
provocative than that.
No.
Yeah. However, it all depends on the exact power level of the opponent. If it's like a low-ranking, just kind of foot soldier Shinigami, then only 1 or 2 drops in the brain will probably do. However, if it's a stronger opponent like Captain Class or Vice Captain, as was the case with Kensei and Rose and Rangiku and Toshiro, she has to pour enough blood in the person's body to reach their hearts, so it will kind of it'll spread throughout their entire body. So that's the reason that the zombies that are of the higher level all have like a reddish hue to their skin. She fought against Mayuri, who was like the perfect opponent for her, honestly, because, you know, really mad scientist. Yeah, so she doesn't really fight herself. She has a bow, which is in the shape of like a skull and, you know, bones and stuff, but that's all her really offensive technique. She's not really meant to attack her opponent. She just lets zombies do it for her. So her zombies fought against Mayuri's zombies, which culminated in Toshiro being a zombie and them fighting against Mayuri. But Mayuri's, you know, mad genius, so he figured out a cure for her zombie disease, which managed to make Giselle's zombies Mayuri's zombies, which basically screwed her over, and then he just stabbed her right in the chest with Zombie Kensei's sword. Now, I don't know why Mayuri thought this was an adequate finisher, because, spoiler alert, the zombie girl turned out to be a zombie girl. So, yeah, that's basically how she survived, although she used her release form, I guess, to come back from the life and suck on Bambietta's still blood. Yeah, totally. Just the blood. Man, this chick is creepy. Oh, I'm sorry. She's not really a chick. Yeah, it turns out Giselle's really a dude. Yeah, 100% dude. In case you're curious, by the way, where my reference material is for this, as far as I know, there was like an extra bonus page for Chapter 615 when it was originally released in Weekly Shonen Jump. I can't find the RAWs or a translated version of this anywhere, but if someone could find it, I would be greatly appreciated. But basically, it's a little page that has like extra data on the Sternritters, kind of like a data book, like a little mini data book. And Kubo did confirm in that extra page on Chapter 615 that Giselle is in fact male.
Oh.
So I'm going to assume, given that what we've seen her do with her zombie powers, she can not only turn people into zombies, what we've seen with Candace is she can actually, like, take the body apart, like the skin and the bone and the muscle, and she can, like, give it to somebody else to, like, reforge limbs. Like, Candace lost an arm to Ichigo, and Giselle just kind of took the body of a Squad 11 member
and then just attached it back
on. The skin and flesh and reforged Candace's arm.
Do you reckon she's done that to herself with female parts? It wasn't like she just cut off a Shinigami's arm and gave it to Candace. Candace regrew her own fucking arm with the raw material. So my theory on Giselle, and I know this gets kind of like Hannibal Lecter, Buffalo Bill-ish, but I think that's where you're going,
so he's a dude and wants to be a girl. So he killed a girl, and then he took her body parts, and then reshaped his body with the girl parts on the outside, but he's still a guy underneath.
Yeah.
So it's like he's going to resemble, I would imagine he would resemble like Gollum or Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. You know, like after his power is removed, all the flesh melts off him, and he's just this emaciated demon creature sort of thing. Like that's what I would imagine, and really he looks like a cute girl on the outside, but it's really that. But yeah, he's a guy, most definitely. Yumachika and Charlotte almost always confirm that in the canon of the series, and Kubo confirmed that in that extra page that I can't find. But yeah, that's Giselle there. She went with Latato to try to take down Yuha. It didn't go over too well. We don't really see what happened there, but we see the last panel of her lying on the ground, blood all around her. But given the fact that she is the zombie, and Yuha didn't really seem to deliver like the final blow. I mean. It's Yuha, so I want to say that he knows what he's doing to his own minions and what her ability is, because he's the one that gave it to her.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't look like an injury that she would really die from. But yeah, she might very well be dead. But I would like to see a little bit more of her or him just to see where this goes.
It's interesting. That is really dark.
Thank you, Giselle Guel, for being the Sternritter trap in the army, because every army needs some good traps. Alright guys, well that's all the Sternritters. I hope you guys enjoyed. I certainly did. This was a long-ass project, but I'm so glad I did it for future generations to really know who these people were.
It's cool. And here it is.
Or hands, or brains in jars. You know what I mean. I don't discriminate. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm probably going to make all of this into like one big like movie video, like an hour and a half if you really want to watch the whole thing start to finish. So look out for that. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. This will be Tekking 101, signing out.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. Oh, God. Oh. Oh, give me a minute. Oh. Oh. Wow. That was class. I love it. I love how entertaining he can be whilst talking about those characters, man. That was really cool. So we did it. We checked it out. It's been a while, but I did it, man. And that was really entertaining. That was cool. There's still other long videos to check out as well, like Too Spooky's Top 10 Bankai, Top 10 Shikai, and Nux Taku's 1 million subscriber special, which is an hour and a half. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get them all out, because I'm still trying to do 2 videos a day on top of trying to film these long videos, but we shall see what happens. Thank you guys very much for watching, guys. If you have watched all the way through, my god, thank you. What did you guys think of that? What did you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. My neck is killing me, and I'll see you guys. It's all you guys next time.